You know, when it comes to saving local buildings and landmarks, it always takes the time and dedication of committed individuals. On Bainbridge Island, one piece of Washington history is bringing a community together to do just that.
Just across Puget Sound from Seattle sits the scenic island community of Bainbridge. Locals share a deep pride in the island's heritage, so when one of their hidden gems became threatened, people came out of the woodwork to preserve it. Camp Yeomalt has been a fixture on the eastern shore of Bainbridge Island for more than 70 years. The rustic log cabin has served as a shelter for scouts, community groups, the U.S. Army, even Russian sailors. Its unique construction makes it one of a kind.
It was made entirely from materials that came from within a mile of here. The logs that you see that make the walls were all fir poles that were cut down. The roof that you see were cedar shakes that were split from local cedar trees. And one of the things that's really special about this cabin is it has a massive 22-foot high chimney, all made from local stone that was hand split and then put together smooth-faced. And what's special about that fireplace is that it not only has a fireplace inside the building, but if kids or people wanted to gather outside, it has a fireplace outside.
The cabin was constructed in 1935 in the middle of the Great Depression. Americans were struggling for work all over the country, and the small community of Bainbridge was no exception.
The main industry on the island was the Winslow shipyard. And every morning at 8 o'clock, a whistle would ring echo through the hills of the island if there was work at the shipyard. And most often that whistle didn't ring. And fellows had to stay home, work in their gardens, dig clams, cut firewood, whatever they could do.
The Works Progress Administration commissioned building a log cabin on the island as part of the Work Relief Program. The WPA was the largest program under President Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal, intended to boost the economy during this period of overwhelming financial hardship. An early scouting troop named the area Camp Major Hopkins after the founder of local scouting. Major Hopkins had an illustrious career in the U.S. and abroad, but devoted much of his life to island politics and social activities.
Hopkins had grown up for the first 25 years of his life as a U.S. citizen, but living in Europe. He had gone to Charterhouse, which is a very prestigious British school, through arrangements of Lord Baden-Powell, the founder of World Scouting. We learned that Scouting was founded as a world peace movement, not as a military movement at all. It didn't have any associations, and it had been an effort by Baden-Powell to educate children and have them work with nature rather than the military.
The cabin was known as Camp Hopkins until the year 2000, when the Park District changed the name back to Camp Yeomalt Park. This name has special significance in relation to the land the camp sits on.
Yeomalt comes from the Lachute dialect of Coast Salish word Yeomalt, which meant a place where the north and south wind come together and do battle. It's speaking of the fact that the winds converge off this point.
The cabin that was enjoyed by generation after generation of island residents fell into a state of disrepair in the 1990s. Vandalism and neglect made the structure unusable, and finally, someone took notice.
This little log cabin sitting in this little quiet park out of sight and visibility from the island didn't really get the attention that it needed when it needed it. In March of 2005, the Park District recognized that they had a number of properties that needed attention. It was kind of put up or shut up time. They set a timetable that if something didn't happen and some group didn't come forward to help look after this cabin, it was going to be knocked down.
The group, known as Team Yeomalt, launched a major campaign to save the cabin. In addition to fundraising, they've held work parties to get the restoration underway.
One of the first things we did was to call the National Park Service and find out from them who they considered to be the best log cabin architect in the region. And the fellow who they said did all of their log cabin restoration was an architect who was with the University of Oregon, a fellow by the name of Fred Walters. And I'll never forget when he left, he said, Jerry, he said, we restore a lot of log cabins throughout the Northwest. And if the truth be told, he said, compared to the cabins that we restore, this one is a palace.
Fred Walters instructed the team on how to conduct a wood survey, which was critical to the restoration process. Many of the lower logs had rotted over the years.
We mapped literally every log, and we put together a list and a mapping that told us exactly what logs had to be replaced. And there were 477 lineal feet of logs that had to be replaced.
The progress on this restoration would not have been possible without the help of committed volunteers. A local woman donated fir trees from her land, and a horse logger from Port Townsend even brought his horses to haul the logs out of the forest. As the crew waits for the fresh fir logs to dry out, they continue to fundraise and make plans for the next phase. Gerald says the preservation of the cabin is about much more than just the building.
This was part of our culture and our history. And you just walk into this cabin and you just feel something really special and unique. I think we only see into the future as far as we also see back. And if we're going to be a culture with cultural Alzheimer's, we'll go nowhere. And we need the vision and the recognition of what's gone before and why to help us step into the future.
The project has united this community in a special way, and Team Yeomalt has developed quite a sense of camaraderie.
There was a very popular song in the 1930s. It was written by a famous Washington State songwriter named Harold Weeks, and he wrote a song called "Little Cabin in the Cascade Mountains." And we thought early on that a project like this deserved a theme song. And so we took his tune and put the following words to it. And then we call this the Yeomalt Cabin song. There's an old log cabin in the Yeomalt forest, and that's where I long to be. Where the tall firs grow, the north winds blow, and eagles soar gracefully. Salmon berries lay hazy, and the sun shines lazy, and the days end peacefully. And then everybody chimes in. Oh, that old log cabin in the Yeomalt forest is a paradise to me.
For more information about the cabin or to contribute to its restoration, go to www.biparks.org.